Hey, 555ers, Andrew here. Hope you're doing well. Guys, coming to you with my first watch review of 2021, and I have to admit, 2020 was a real dry spell for me as far as my watch collecting goes. It was mostly just because I felt like there were more important things to be attending to in 2020, probably, but now that we're starting to settle down a little bit, I'm very thrilled to bring you a very interesting watch that to me really appeals to the kind of collector I am at this point. This is the Yema Superman Heritage USA Edition. This is a very interesting little dive watch that we're going to get into here today. And first of all, I want to thank Yema for sending this to me quite a while ago. As you guys know, I have a full-time job. I'm a school administrator, and with all of the hardcore COVID stuff going on the last year, it's been really hard for me to focus on videos. And Yema's been super chill about me having this watch for quite a while, and so I've been really able to take it in. And I have a really fun analogy to compare this watch to and explain why it appeals to me, even though I'll tell you right up front, there are some flaws. There are some problems with it. And I'm going to be really direct about that. But I also am going to tell you that I still really like this watch and I would love to have it in my collection. It is just a loaner. It was just lent to me by Yema and they let me have it for quite a while. So I want to thank them for that. And I want you guys to make sure to leave a thumbs up if you enjoy these watch videos. Last quick thing before we get started. If you're a subscriber, please let me know in the comments below and let me know how long you've been a subscriber. I really like to hear about when my subscribers are actually seeing my content, since the analytics show that very few of my subscribers are actually tuning into my videos regularly. So if you're a sub, thanks so much for tuning in, and make sure to let me know how long you've been watching below. Let's get into this Quirky Yema Superman USA Edition. If you've been following 555 gear for a while, you guys know that I am an avid Scotch collector. I've been enjoying especially single malt Scotch since my college days. But any serious single malt guy will tell you that there's no perfect one out there. In fact, many of the most memorable single malt Scotches are the quirky ones. Now, there is certainly refinement, and that matters, but often the most memorable Scotch notes are going to be ones that are just kind of unusual. That really brings us to this watch, the Yema Superman. This happens to be a modern take on a very vintage style. Yema has been producing watches since 1948, and their vintage die watches in particular are something that are celebrated. With this Superman Heritage Edition, we're looking at a modern size watch with modern features. This watch happens to have a domed sapphire crystal and a sapphire bezel, but it also has Yema's iconic shovel hands and their interesting bezel locking mechanism. So in other words, there are some very distinctive features of this watch, along with its sort of modern size of 41 millimeters, 20 millimeter lugs, 13 millimeters thick. It's trying to take some of its old vintage design cues and bring them into a modern watch. And the result is kind of quirky. I had someone comment on Instagram that they thought that this watch was vintage. And I can't help but agree. This watch looks like it could be a vintage watch. It's got very distinctive features on the dial. Look at these applied indices. Those are little loom lines in the middle. The shovel hands are, of course, very vintage. And as you can see, this is a highly reflective, highly domed sapphire crystal. It's really pretty neat. And the bezel itself, even though that's a sapphire insert, it has sort of a bakelite feel. It looks like a vintage watch, even though it's a modern size. Really, of course, I think our subconscious is deeply infiltrated with Submariner, and so in some ways this is vaguely reminiscent, of course, of that classic style. As you'll notice, it has a smooth sweeping seconds hand. This does have a Solita SW200 movement, which is a 28,800 beats per hour movement, automatic winding, very much a kind of a clone of an ETA 2824. It's got a beautiful case back with Yema's, I guess, a signature crown seal on it, or their unique mark. And the case itself has really a beautiful design throughout. Skinny lugs and really interesting polishing and finishing. The bracelet is just a sort of standard folding bracelet. It's all held together by pressure. As I will get into in a little bit, this bracelet really is not a strong part of this watch overall. In fact, it's the weakest link. It's pretty disappointing. It does not stand out as a watch I would even want to take diving on account of the bracelet. But aside from that, really, the watch is beautifully finished, exceptionally finished, I would even say, for a $1,000 watch. And as you can see here, this watch does have a problem with its end links. These kind of funky square end links don't interface well at all with the actual lugs of the watch. And so what happens is it gets kind of stuck down in this lower position. It's easily the most annoying feature of the watch. And it simply just kind of looks weird on the wrist. Here is a wrist shot. I have 7¼ inch wrists. And when sized properly, the watch is extraordinarily comfortable. It wears just like an Omega Seamaster or a Rolex Submariner. Not thick at all. Again, we're coming in at a thickness that's very reasonable. It's 13 millimeters even with that raised crown. Very comfortable. Not a lot of hair pinching. Yeah, that end link, man, that's quirk, man. There's nothing but quirk there in this application of this bracelet with this case style. And I actually think Yema somewhat remedied this with some other bracelet designs. The other obvious quirk with this watch is the weird bezel locking mechanism. What you have basically here is a piece of press steel. As you can see, that when the crown is unthreaded, it allows the bezel to rotate. So if you needed your bezel to lock up, like was a serious problem in the early diving days because the bezels were just held in by pressure and not by a spring. They were not nearly as secure. This old-fashioned bezel lock would have been useful, but obviously with modern diving, timing, compression dives, etc., this locking mechanism makes no sense because you'd need to be unthreading the crown underwater, which is, of course, forbidden. And so, yeah. And the other thing you might notice, unfortunately, in this is that the 12 o'clock triangle on the bezel doesn't perfectly line up with the 12 o'clock indice. So, unfortunately, there's just some kind of weird, it's not exactly quality control, it's really design defects in this watch, in spite of all of its charm. The end links aren't good. You've got this, I guess interesting, but really not very well conceived bezel locking device. And then the bezel itself has what is commonly referred to as sort of the Seiko problem of alignment. So all of these things are only a problem if A, you're serious about taking this watch diving, which this is just not the watch for that, get a Seiko Turtle or something. But for the dive watch connoisseur, for the guy who wants something different in his collection and wants something that's admittedly very attractive, that's where this watch shines. So to me, that's what I like about the Yema Superman. It is truly a unique watch. So yeah, so when it comes down to it, the Yema Superman has some sort of design, quirks. Put it nicely, flaws maybe if you're being a little bit more objective. But the truth is that in spite of that, I've really enjoyed wearing this watch. I do think it looks fantastic with the sapphire bezel and the glossy dial. Just a beautiful shiny dial with these great vintage applied indices. It's just a really neat look, very dressy, and definitely different. As a collector, I appreciate attempts at innovation, even if they weren't the ones that ended up finally working, and that's the way I feel about this bezel lock mechanism. I also, understand that most bracelets on watches are not perfectly designed, and so the ones that really are iconic, it is noteworthy. So the fact that this watch has some quirks, it's not the end of the world. It is meant to be a collector's piece, and that's what it is. And for that, I really enjoy it. Is it the first dive watch you should buy? No, it's definitely not. Is it the nice watch that you should buy in your collection? Probably not like the nice watch. Certainly, it's using a lot of nice materials, and there are some cool things about it. But this is This is for the dive watch collector who really wants something different. They're already squared away with their Omegas and their Rolexes, or maybe even have something like a Doxa, you know, some of the more mainline dive brands that are out there, and they want something that's heritage, but still able to be worn on a wrist in a way that's sort of contemporary. Maybe really will just be a collector's talking piece. The Yema Superman is perfect for that person. And speaking as someone who's enjoyed wearing this watch for much longer than your average reviewer should enjoy having a piece like this, I got to tell you that it's really warmed up to me over the months that I've had it. Shovel hands, applied indices, a really beautiful, unique dial. You know, even the typesetting, I didn't mention this earlier in the review, but the typesetting on this watch is just phenomenally simple. A little curly Y, it's only got 4 lines of text, a little France at the bottom of the dial. These are really cool things that a lot of micro brand companies are not getting right. And so in spite of its obvious flaws that I pointed out, there are really charming, worthwhile things about this watch, which makes me really glad to share it with you today. And I would love to hear your thoughts about it too. What do you think of the Yema Superman? Is this a brand that you're interested in? Are you interested in these revival heritage brands? Let me know in the comments below. If you've made it this far, I really would appreciate a thumbs up. It shows me that you finished the video, shows me that you were into it. And as always, guys, thank you very much for subscribing. Thanks very much for tuning in. What do you want to see in 2021? More watch content? More gear content? I am all ears. So I really appreciate you tuning in, guys. Cheers.